What would make a mother kill her own children? How can someone go from being a normal parent to a murderer? These are the questions at the heart of the Lori Vallow case. It's a tangled web of fringe religious beliefs, suspicious deaths, and the horrific murders of two innocent children, 16-year-old Tylee Ryan and 7-year-old Joshua J.J. Vallow. As the details emerged, the world watched in disbelief. This is the tragic timeline of how extreme views and a thirst for power led to unspeakable evil. Lori and Chad's descent into a delusional doomsday cult would ultimately destroy multiple families and end with both of them sentenced to life in prison for their wicked crimes. Lori's troubled past. Lori Norn Cox was born into a devout Mormon family from California in 1973. Her early adulthood were marked by a series of failed relationships and marriages. She first wed her high school sweetheart in 1992, but the union quickly crumbled. Undeterred, Lori tried again in 1995 with another partner. Together, they had a son named Colby. However, this marriage also ended in divorce just 3 years later. Desperate for love and stability, Lori married her third husband, Joseph Ryan, in 2001. Joseph adopted Colby, and the couple welcomed a daughter, Tylee, in 2002. But beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Lori and Joseph's marriage was plagued by conflict, and a bitter custody battle ensued when the pair inevitably divorced in 2005. During this tumultuous time, Lori's brother, Alex Cox, allegedly attacked Joseph Ryan, claiming that he had been abusive towards Lori and the children. Years later, in 2020, a shocking revelation emerged when Colby disclosed in an interview that Joseph Ryan had sexually abused him as a child. With 3 failed marriages in her rear view and seeking a fresh start, Lori married Charles Vallow in 2006 at the age of 33. In 2013, they expanded their family by adopting Charles' grandnephew, Joshua J.J., who had autism. But little did anyone know that this seemingly happy family was about to be shattered by a web of deceit and deadly obsession. Chad's journey into the darkness. Born in Utah in 1968, Chad Daybell was also raised in a Mormon household. He married Tamara Tammy Douglas in 1990, and together they had 5 children. Chad worked various jobs, including as a gravedigger and cemetery caretaker, but his true passion lay in writing novels about religion and the end times. In 2004, Chad and Tammy founded Spring Creek Book, a small publishing company that printed Chad's own works and those of other authors with unconventional beliefs about the apocalypse. As Chad's business flourished, he gained a following among extreme Mormon groups, becoming a sought-after writer and speaker. His novels often depicted dystopian futures and featured characters based on his own family. Chad frequently wrote about a supernatural voice that guided him and his characters, offering advice and instructions. Chad claimed to have had 2 near-death experiences that granted him access to otherworldly visions. He believed that these visions were genuine glimpses into future events. Chad also contributed to a paid Mormon forum called Another Voice of Warning, Vallow, where he shared his near-death experiences and his predictions about the future. As time went on, Chad's religious beliefs grew increasingly radical. He became fixated on his visions and the events he believed would transpire during the end times. This dark and apocalyptic obsession consumed Chad, ultimately leading him down a sinister path that would intertwine with Lori's troubled life in a twisted tale of love, loss, and deadly consequences. Lori meets Chad. In 2018, Lori became obsessed with Chad's books about near-death experiences and the apocalypse. She met Chad at a Preparing a People event in October of that year, and the two quickly developed a strong connection. Chad claimed that he and Lori had lived past lives together on different planets. Chad believed he had lived 31 previous lives and Lori had lived 21, with 5 of those lives overlapping with each other. He also prophesied that he and Lori would be chosen to lead the 144,000 survivors of the end times. Lori confided to her friend Melanie Gibb that she and Chad were meant to be together despite them both still being married to other people. When Gibb suggested that Chad and Lori should divorce their spouses first, Lori claimed they weren't allowed to because of information they got from the spirit world. Over time, a small group formed around Chad and Lori's teachings, which they called the Church of the Firstborn. It included Lori's brother Alex Cox and niece Melanie Boudreau. Chad and Lori believed in ideas of light and dark spirits possessing people. The dark spirits turned people into zombies, and the only way to free them was through death. They even developed a scoring system to rate people's spiritual status. Deaths begin. In February 2019, Lori's behavior became so alarming that Charles Vallow filed for divorce, citing fears for his life. Lori apparently told Charles that her feelings for him and JJ had faded away and abruptly disappeared without a trace. For nearly 2 months, Lori was nowhere to be found, but Charles claimed that she had threatened to kill him if he got in the way of her mission as a God-assigned leader of the 144,000. Charles later dropped the divorce filing, hoping to repair the marriage, but tragically, in July 2019, he was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex Cox. Cox claimed he had shot Charles in self-defense during a dispute, and no charges were filed. A few days after Charles passed away, Chad sent Lori a love story through text messages, which investigators described as a romance novel. The story featured James and Elena, code names for Chad and Lori, and included detailed descriptions of their sexual relationship. Lori relocated to Rexburg, Idaho, with her kids in August 2019 to be closer to Chad. In the meantime, Chad had been telling people in his inner circle that his wife Tammy would die before her 50th birthday. Investigators later found they had discussed Tammy being possessed by a dark spirit named Viola that needed to be released. Indeed, on October 19th, Tammy was found deceased in her home, seemingly from natural causes. Chad claimed his wife had been ill and died in her sleep, but later investigations would find that this was not the case. At Tammy's funeral, Heather Daybell, Chad's sister-in-law, noticed something off about Chad's behavior. She said he didn't seem genuinely upset. Jason William added that Chad was trying to cry but wasn't shedding real tears. During the service, Chad shockingly spoke about Tammy's depression, called her lazy, and claimed she was hard to live with. Police reports later revealed that Chad received $430,000 in life insurance after Tammy's death, equivalent to about $512 in 2023. Chad declined an autopsy, and her death was ruled as from unknown causes. Just 2 weeks after Tammy's death, Chad and Lori married in Hawaii. In December 2019, Lori's brother Alex Cox also died suddenly of what was deemed natural causes. His death came just a day after police told Lori that Tammy's body was being exhumed for an autopsy. Alex had previously attacked Lori's third husband Joseph Ryan in 2017 and was responsible for the death of fourth husband, Charles Vallow. Some speculate that Alex, with his low IQ and involvement in the cult, may have been an easily manipulated enforcer in the string of violence and deaths surrounding Lori and Chad before his own demise. JJ and Tylee go missing. In the midst of the curious deaths, Lori's children JJ and Tylee mysteriously vanished in September 2019, shortly after Lori moved to Idaho. Tylee was last seen on September 8th in Yellowstone National Park with her mom, brother, and uncle Alex. The last known footage of JJ was from a neighbor's doorbell camera on September 17th. He had an unexcused absence from school on the 23rd, and Lori told the school on the 24th that she would be homeschooling him. But JJ was never seen again after September 22nd. Lori continued collecting her children's Social Security survivor benefits after they went missing and seemed unconcerned about their whereabouts. When police conducted a welfare check on JJ in late November, Lori claimed he was with a friend in Arizona. Police discovered that this was a lie. Shooting of Brandon Boudreau. Adding to the mystery, in October 2019, Lori's niece Melanie Boudreau's husband Brandon was shot at in Arizona by someone driving a Jeep registered to the deceased Charles Vallow. Brandon had been fighting a bitter divorce from Melanie, who had gotten deeply involved in Lori's cult. Brandon believes the attempt on his life was connected to Lori's group and the children's disappearance. Lori and Chad flee. In late November 2019, Rexburg police went to Lori's home for a welfare check on JJ and discovered she had fled Idaho with Chad. Investigators then realized Tylee was also missing. A search of Lori's abandoned storage unit revealed the kids' bikes, photos, and clothes. Police officially announced JJ and Tylee as missing in December and said Lori and Chad were persons of interest and their disappearance was possibly linked to the suspicious death of Tammy Daybell. A massive search effort ensued as the FBI became involved in the complex multi-state case. Lori and Chad were discovered to be in Hawaii, living off the proceeds of Tammy's life insurance. They were served with a court order to produce the children, but failed to comply. Remarkably, the couple acted aloof and unconcerned in the face of questions about the kids. Remains found and arrests made. Authorities searched Chad Daybell's property in Salem, Idaho on June 9, 2020. In a shocking discovery, they unearthed the remains of Tylee and JJ in shallow graves in Chad's backyard pet cemetery. Tylee's body had been dismembered and burned, while JJ was found with tape on his mouth, arms, and wrists. Chad was arrested and charged with concealing evidence. Lori had already been arrested in February 2020 on charges of child abandonment and contempt of court. Both were later charged with murder and conspiracy related to the deaths of the children and Chad's previous wife, Tammy. Lori was initially deemed incompetent to stand trial for a short period before being ruled able to face the charges. Trials and sentencing. Lori and Chad's trial was severed into two separate proceedings. Lori's trial began in April 2023, where the prosecution laid out the extensive evidence of her role in the murders of her children and Chad's wife as part of a Doomsday cult scheme. Digital communications showed her claiming the children and Tammy had turned into zombies that needed to be released. An autopsy on Tammy's exhumed body also found that she had died of asphyxiation. On May 12, 2023, Lori was found guilty of all charges: 2 counts of first-degree murder in her kids' deaths, 3 counts of conspiracy related to the kids and Tammy, and grand theft for continuing to collect the dead children's benefits. On July 31, 2023, Lori was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She maintained her innocence, claiming Jesus told her no one was murdered. Chad's trial began in April 2024, with the prosecution painting him as the cult leader who used Lori as a pawn to remove obstacles to their relationship and religious delusions. On May 30, 2024, Chad was found guilty of all charges: 3 counts each of first-degree murder and conspiracy related to Tammy, Tylee, and JJ, plus grand theft and insurance fraud. On June 1st, he was sentenced to death for his role in masterminding the murders. Justice served, but wounds remain. The tragic case of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell came to a close with their convictions and sentencing, but the heartbreak and pain it caused will linger on for the many lives they destroyed in pursuit of their doomsday delusions. The search for JJ and Tylee gripped the nation, as people held out hope the children would be found alive. The devastating discovery of their remains was a blow that will forever haunt all who loved them. No punishment for Lori and Chad can bring back what was lost. In the end, this is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked extremism, the power of cults to destroy lives, and the ultimate evil of filicide, the murder of one's own children. The tragic story of Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, and the innocent lives they destroyed will not soon be forgotten. May Tylee, JJ, Charles, Tammy, and all the victims somehow find peace as their killers face earthly and spiritual justice. Let this be a warning to all of how quickly one can descend from a path of light into unfathomable darkness. And may the memories of Tylee and JJ forever shine bright. Germany's deadliest killer nurse. Our tragic story begins with a man entrusted to care for the sick and vulnerable. But behind the calm exterior of a nurse beat the heart of a monster. This is the chilling tale of Niels Hergel, who took the lives of over 85 patients, making him the most prolific serial killer in modern German history. His heinous crimes have shocked the nation and left countless families devastated. Niels Hergel's journey from ordinary citizen to notorious killer began in the coastal town of Wilhelmshaven, Germany. Born on December 30th, 1976, Hergel grew up in what he described as a sheltered childhood, far removed from the horrors he would later inflict. His family had deep roots in healthcare, with both his father and grandmother working as nurses. This family legacy would shape Hergel's career path, though no one could have foreseen the dark turn it would take. As a young man, Hergel appeared to be following a respectable trajectory. He completed his nursing education with dedication, seemingly embracing the noble calling of caring for the sick and vulnerable. In 1999, he took his first job at the St. Willihad Hospital in his hometown of Wilhelmshaven. Colleagues remembered him as confident and committed to his patients, qualities that should have made him an asset to any medical team. But beneath the surface of this promising young nurse, a disturbing psychology was taking root. Experts would later identify a severe narcissistic disorder in Hergel, a condition that would fuel his insatiable need for attention and admiration. This psychological flaw, combined with the power and access afforded by his position, would prove to be a deadly combination. The killings begin. In 1999, Niels Hergel took a position at the Oldenburg Clinic, working in the intensive care unit specializing in cardiac surgery. In August 2001, the hospital staff, including Hergel, convened to address a concerning rise in both patient resuscitations and fatalities over the previous months. Investigations revealed that 58% of these events took place during Hergel's shifts. Following the meeting, Hergel took a 3-week sick leave. Remarkably, during his absence, only 2 patients in Ward 211 passed away, a notable decrease compared to the period before his leave. Years later, after his arrest, Hergel confessed that he thought he had been discovered at the time of the meeting, which prompted his leave. Notwithstanding these disturbing indicators, Hergel was not investigated directly. Instead, pressured by the head physician of Ward 211, Hergel was simply reassigned to the anesthesiology department in 2001. The head physician of the anesthesiology ward quickly grew wary of Hergel's recurring presence during emergency situations. In September 2002, the chief physician of the Oldenburg Clinic confronted Hergel after several patients under his care were found in critical condition for apparently inexplicable reasons. Hergel was given the choice to either resign from the clinic while continuing to receive his full salary for 3 months or transfer to the clinic's logistics division, where he would be responsible for transporting patients within the hospital. Astonishingly, rather than alerting the authorities about Hergel, the Oldenburg Clinic permitted him to discreetly resign. On October 10, 2022, Hergel obtained a glowing letter of recommendation from the clinic's nursing director. The letter concluded by affirming that Hergel had executed his duties to the highest level of satisfaction. Equipped with this outstanding endorsement, Hergel transitioned to the Delmenhorst Clinic in December 2002, harboring his deadly secret. The change in environment did nothing to deter his murderous compulsions. In fact, the new surroundings appeared to further embolden him. At Delmenhorst, the trend persisted, a wave of suspicious fatalities coinciding with Hergel's shifts. Deadly game in the ICU. This move placed him in a high-stakes environment where life and death hung in the balance daily. For most healthcare professionals, such a setting inspires a deep sense of responsibility and care. For Hergel, it became a stage for his twisted desires. With calculated precision, He deliberately induced cardiac arrests in patients by administering overdoses of heart medication. This gave him the opportunity to play the role of savior, attempting to resuscitate the very patients he had endangered. As Hergel's confidence grew, so did the frequency and boldness of his actions. Patients who were already vulnerable became unwitting pawns in his deadly game. He exploited the chaos and urgency of emergency situations to carry out his sinister acts. The true extent of Hergel's crimes during this period would not be known for years. Hospital records would later reveal a disturbing spike in deaths and resuscitations during Hergel's shifts, a red flag that went unnoticed or ignored by hospital administration. This failure of oversight would have devastating consequences, allowing Hergel's killing spree to continue unchecked for several years, leaving a trail of grieving families and unanswered questions in his wake. A killer unmasked. Hergel's deadly rampage finally came to an end on June 22, 2005, when a fellow nurse caught him in the act of unnecessarily administering Agmaline medication to a patient in Delmenhorst. The patient survived and Hergel was arrested, then later sentenced to 7.5 years in prison for attempted murder. But this was only the beginning of the revelations. During the course of his 2015 trial, Hergel admitted to his psychiatrist that he had killed up to 30 patients. Shocked investigators launched a special commission, codenamed Cardio, to determine the true scope of his crimes. The commission exhumed and examined 134 bodies from 67 cemeteries and analyzed hundreds of medical records. It was a painstaking process complicated by the fact that many potential victims had already been cremated. The investigation found evidence of an additional 16 murders and 10 attempted murders at the Oldenburg Clinic between 1999 to 2020. Scope of the evil crimes. As more details emerged, the scale of Hergel's killing spree began to strain belief. Investigators uncovered at least 36 suspicious deaths at the Oldenburg Clinic and 64 more at Delmenhorst between 2000 to 2005, though they believe the actual number is likely much higher. If convicted, it would make Hergel the deadliest serial killer in Germany's post-war history. The victims were men and women, ranging in age from 34 to 96. Hergel's methods were coldly efficient. He would inject patients with cardiovascular medications like Agmaline, sotalol, lidocaine, amiodarone, and calcium chloride, bringing on cardiac arrest. He would then try to resuscitate them in order to impress colleagues with his life-saving skills. Tragically, in many cases, they could not be revived. Hergel claims that the decisions to commit these crimes were relatively spontaneous, and his motivations were a mix of boredom and a desire to show off his resuscitation abilities. Prosecutors paint a picture of an egomaniac who, in all cases at least, accepted the death of the patients as a result of the effect of the drugs. Aftermath and anger. As the horrors unfolded, the German public was left stunned and outraged. How could such a monster operate unchecked for so long within the healthcare system? Investigations revealed the catastrophic failures by hospital staff and administrators. Records showed that deaths and resuscitations soared on Hergel's watch, in some cases more than doubling. A law firm's investigation concluded that leading doctors at the Oldenburg Clinic had been aware of the mounting death toll, but either gave no thought to the cause or played down suspicions. Remarkably, as mentioned earlier, rather than report Hergel to police, the Oldenburg Clinic allowed him to transfer to Delmenhorst with a letter of recommendation. Several Delmenhorst staff noticed his suspicious behavior, with one even reporting him to her superiors. But still nothing was done. Even after the 2005 incident that led to his arrest, Hergel was allowed to continue working for 2 more days, during which he killed yet another patient. A trial and a warning. In a packed courtroom on June 6, 2019, Niels Hergel was sentenced to life in prison for 85 counts of murder, the maximum penalty under German law. Delivering the verdict, Judge Sebastian Boerman struggled to put the enormity of the crimes into words. "Your guilt is unimaginable," he told Hergel. The human mind struggles to take in the sheer scale of these crimes. A trial spanning from October 2018 to June 2019, Niels Hergel faced an unprecedented 100 murder charges for deaths that occurred between February 2000 and June 2005. The 85 victims were aged between 34 and 96 years old. Due to the high number of people involved, including 120 joint plaintiffs, the proceedings were held in the spacious Wesser Ems Hallen ballrooms. On the first day of the trial, Hergel confessed to 43 of the murders, could not recall 52, and denied involvement in the remaining 5. Over the course of 24 days, the court heard testimony from 32 witnesses, 8 of whom testified under oath. Medical experts provided detailed information on the patient's conditions and the effects of the drugs administered by Hergel. A forensic psychologist examined the truthfulness of Hergel's testimony and found no indications of a false confession. In their closing arguments, prosecutors sought convictions on 97 counts and acquittals on 3. The defense argued that the evidence was insufficient in many cases, seeking acquittals on 31 counts, murder convictions on 55, and attempted murder convictions on 14. On June 6, 2019, the Oldenburg court sentenced Hergel to life in prison for 85 counts of murder, with the remaining 15 resulting in not guilty verdicts. The court decided that Hergel's crimes were extremely serious. Because of this, he got the harshest punishment possible under German law, a life sentence with no chance of parole after 15 years. The court said Hergel's reason for killing to look like a hero when he saved patients was a base motive, which is one of the things that has to be true for a murder conviction in Germany. Both Hergel and a joint plaintiff appealed the verdict, but the Federal Court of Justice dismissed these appeals on September 11, 2020, finalizing the judgment. A further trial against 4 employees of the Delmenhorst Clinic, where Hergel had worked, was postponed until after the nurse's verdict was final, as he had the right to refuse testimony until then. The trial garnered significant public interest, with attendance increasing as the proceedings progressed. The court provided 80 seats for media representatives and 118 for the general public, with attendance peaking at around 190 spectators and 25 media members. Addressing the court for the last time, Hergel turned to the gallery where families of his victims sat. "I would like to sincerely apologize for everything I did to you over the course of years," he said. But for many, his remorse rang hollow. "He only acted out his remorse to gather plus points," said Gaby Lubin, a lawyer representing victims' families. "He should have stayed silent." While the conviction brings legal closure, the scars left by Hergel's crimes will linger in Germany for generations. His deadly spree has forced a national reckoning about how someone charged with protecting society's most vulnerable could instead become their killer. It has exposed frightening gaps in oversight, communication, and accountability across German healthcare. And it has shattered the trust that citizens place in those who take an oath to, first, do no harm. As Germany grapples with these uncomfortable questions, the victims of Niels Hergel must not be forgotten. Behind the staggering numbers are real people, mothers, fathers, grandparents who placed their lives in the hands of a caregiver, never imagining the nightmare that would follow. While nothing can bring back those lost, the Hergel case has sounded an urgent alarm, and it is a call to honor the memory of the victims by ensuring such unconscionable violations of trust can never happen again. In this next case, we turn to the sad disappearance of Megan Nickel. On a fateful summer, July 3, 2014, 15-year-old cheerleader and athlete Megan Nickel mysteriously vanished from her family home less than 2 weeks before her 16th birthday, leaving behind a wiped cell phone and a cryptic note. Her sudden disappearance didn't just devastate her loved ones. It shook the entire Fairfield community to its core. This is the heartbreaking story of Megan Nichols and the community that never stopped fighting for her. A troubled relationship. The chilling tale began when Megan, a talented musician, first met 17-year-old Brody Merbarger in their high school glee club. The pair soon developed feelings for each other. But Megan's mom, Kathy Jo Hutchcraft, who had given birth to Megan at just 19, disapproved of the relationship due to their age difference. Kathy Jo told Dateline, "I had this rule. We're not going to have a boyfriend. You can be friends, but we're not going to have this boyfriend thing going on until you're 16. You don't need to put a label on it." Megan's friends also had concerns about the romance, as Brody was reportedly seeing both Megan and another girl from school simultaneously in a messy love triangle. Despite his mother's recent passing, Brody continued to string Megan along until Kathy put her foot down and demanded Megan cease all contact with him. Just days later, Brody showed up at Kathy's doorstep, reportedly accusing her of being too controlling of her daughter and needing medication. He even hinted at involving Child Protection Services against Kathy in a follow-up text. Following this confrontation, Megan's friends noticed she began hiding things and became more secretive. The day Megan vanished. On July 3, 2014, tensions reached a boiling point. Megan and Kathy had been helping a family friend move when Megan complained of a stomachache. Kathy took her home before going back out to finish up. When she returned around 11:35 p.m., Kathy was suddenly hit with a heavy feeling of fear as she entered the house. Megan was nowhere to be found in her room. She didn't answer her phone or respond to texts, prompting Kathy to immediately report her missing to the sheriff's office. The panicked mother searched Megan's room for clues and made a chilling discovery. "I pulled back her blankets and I saw her cell phone," Kathy recalled. "This phone had no case. It was just upside down and looked different because I'm used to seeing purple or pink or something flashy. I picked it up, pushed the button, and it said hola, hello, as if it was a brand new phone." Megan's iPhone had been completely wiped. Elsewhere in the house, Kathy found a handwritten note to Mom that said, "I love you, but I'm never going to be happy here. Don't come looking for me because why spend a lifetime looking for someone who doesn't want to be found?" Desperate for answers, Kathy drove to Brody's house around 7:30 a.m. and found him washing his car. He denied knowing Megan's whereabouts, claiming all he knew was that Megan didn't want to live with Kathy anymore and was planning to move in with her dad. However, Megan's father, who had been largely absent until the previous year, said he had no recent contact with her. Search for Megan. At first, Fairfield police treated Megan's case as a runaway situation. But as searches around town yielded no signs of the teen, her status was changed to endangered missing. Months turned to years with no trace of Megan. It became clear this was not a typical runaway case. So, what really happened to Megan Nichols that summer day? Investigators caught a break when CCTV footage showed Megan withdrawing $200 from the family's account, leading them to believe she had run away. Money had been withdrawn on July 3rd around 2:00 p.m., said Hutchcraft. That's the same time Megan went on a bike ride earlier in the day before she went home not feeling well. The last images of Megan were from this ATM surveillance video. It showed her riding her bike up to the bank, withdrawing money. That was right before she vanished. When questioned, Brody maintained he and Megan were just friends, and that he had been at his girlfriend's house the night she vanished. Brody made a Facebook post in regard to Megan's disappearance. "Okay, this has gone on long enough. I had nothing to do with this, and that I have nothing to hide. I am not in the video as she withdrew her money and ran from her family. This is the first time I have spoken up to defend myself. I shouldn't even have to defend myself if I am not involved." At the time, police stated that he was not a suspect. But as they dug deeper into their relationship, they discovered that the pair exchanged over 150 texts daily. It became clear Brody lied about the nature of their friendship, which had turned sexual. The messages also revealed he knew about Megan's plans to run away and had even discussed going with her. Still, police had nothing concrete to go on. With few leads, the investigation gradually went cold. But Megan's family never gave up hope that answers would be found. A shocking discovery. Tragically, nearly 4 years after Megan first disappeared, her worst fears were realized when the teen's remains were discovered buried on a remote farm. Brody Merbarger would eventually face justice for her murder, but not before a stunning betrayal and secret recording made by someone he considered his best friend. In a shocking twist, Brody Merbarger's best friend and roommate Kyle Ellis was approached by the FBI in 2018. They presented evidence that Brody may have been involved in Megan's murder and asked Kyle if he would be willing to secretly record a conversation confronting Brody about it. Ellis didn't sleep for days after the FBI showed him the new evidence. Fearing what Merbarger might do to others, including a new girlfriend, he agreed to help the FBI in their investigation. Ellis moved out of their shared apartment while Merbarger was out of town, before planning a get-together to explain why he left so abruptly, knowing the FBI would be listening in. On July 2, 2018, the pair met and Ellis began his attempt at coaxing a confession from his best friend. "Why is her blood in your car?" Ellis asked. "That's a good question," Merbarger replied. "I would like to know that, too." When Ellis pressed him further, Merbarger again denied knowing anything about it. And when Ellis directly asked if he had killed Megan, Merbarger firmly responded, "I did not kill Megan." Although Merbarger repeatedly denied any wrongdoing during their conversation. At one point, he made a peculiar statement according to FBI agent Ray Hart. Megan's autopsy a few months prior had concluded that she had most likely been strangled or suffocated to death. In his exchange with Ellis, Merbarger began describing his poor physical and mental state the day before Megan disappeared. "I probably couldn't even have lifted my own body weight, much less strangled. If someone with anger issues found out about something and strangled her," Merbarger said. Ellis described this as a pin-drop moment. Merbarger had accidentally exposed his knowledge of how Megan had been killed. While it didn't amount to a confession, it was pretty close. From the very beginning, detectives believed that in a moment of uncontrolled anger, Brody Merbarger had choked the life out of Megan Nichols, and this verbal slip gave added weight to their suspicions. Brody Merbarger was arrested in October 2020, over 2 years after Kyle Ellis secretly recorded their conversation for the FBI. Justice for Megan. In October 2022, more than 8 years after Megan first disappeared, Brody Merbarger finally stood trial for her murder. He maintained his innocence, but prosecutors presented a mountain of damning evidence against him, including the secret recording made by Kyle Ellis. After an intense week-long trial, a jury deliberated for mere hours before unanimously finding Brody Merbarger guilty of the first-degree murder of Megan Nichols. At his sentencing hearing in November 2022, prosecutors read a letter Brody wrote from jail in which he callously blamed Megan for her own death, showing no remorse. The judge admonished Brody for his cruelty before sentencing him to 50 years in prison. Kyle Ellis felt a sense of relief wash over him, knowing that justice had at last prevailed. However, he continues to find his thoughts drifting back to the man he once called his best friend. Megan's mother, Kathy Jo, provided an emotional victim impact statement, describing the unimaginable anguish of losing her only daughter. "It's really hard to put it into words. I dream about her, and then I have to wake up to this. This is hell." Megan's legacy. The ripple effects of Megan's death have been felt far and wide. Her family, friends, school, and the entire Fairfield community remain forever changed by the loss of such a special young soul. Though nothing can bring Megan back, Megan's family takes some solace in knowing that after an arduous 8-year battle, justice has finally been served. Brody Merbarger will spend decades behind bars, being held accountable for the innocent life he stole. Megan's case captivated the Fairfield community and the nation, shedding light on the importance of taking young people's concerns seriously, no matter how insignificant they may seem at the time. It further highlighted the need for vigilance in protecting young people from predatory relationships and fostering open communication so red flags can be identified before it's too late. By sharing Megan's story, her loved ones hope to prevent other families from enduring similar heartbreak. Authorities and school administrators are now re-examining policies to ensure students feel comfortable coming forward to report inappropriate relationships before they escalate. Megan's mother has become an advocate for other families with missing loved ones, offering support and resources to help them navigate the complex legal system and never stop fighting for answers. She's also working with local schools to implement dating violence prevention and age-appropriate relationship education. Each year on the anniversary of Megan's disappearance, the Fairfield community comes together for a memorial walk to celebrate her life. Purple ribbons, Megan's favorite color, are tied around trees and lampposts all over town in her honor. Scholarships have been created in Megan's name to support Fairfield students pursuing careers helping at-risk youth. The void left by Megan's absence will never be filled, but her loved ones continue to find ways to channel their grief into positive change. Megan's legacy will forever be one of light, love, and the relentless pursuit of justice. If Megan's tragedy can spare even one other victim, then perhaps her death will not have been in vain. As her loved ones continue to honor her memory, Megan's bright spirit will forever shine on. In our next case, we dive deep into the dark mind of Seth Gonzalez. Our tragic story begins with a panicked phone call to Sydney police on July 10, 2001. 20-year-old Seth Gonzalez cries out that he's returned home to find a gruesome scene. His mother, father, and sister have been brutally murdered. Racist graffiti is scrawled on the walls. Who could have committed such a heinous crime against this religious Filipino-Australian family? As the investigation unfolds, suspicion turns to Seth himself. Could this baby-faced son have slaughtered his own family in cold blood? Let's uncover this chilling true crime story of the Gonzalez family murders. The Gonzalez family. The Gonzalez family lived what seemed an ideal life in the quiet Sydney suburb of North Ryde. Parents Teddy and Mary had emigrated from the Philippines in the 1990s following an earthquake that uprooted their comfortable lives there. Despite this, they built a successful life in Australia. Teddy worked as an immigration lawyer, while Mary was the secretary at the family firm. Their two children, 20-year-old Seth and 18-year-old Claudine, were both students. The family were devout and active members of their local Catholic church, and from the outside the Gonzalez family appeared close-knit. But behind closed doors the household was brewing in tension. Teddy and Mary had high hopes and strict expectations for their children, particularly Seth. They wanted him to excel academically, but his ability and interest never matched the demands they had. After attending Parramatta Marist High School, Seth enrolled in medical science at the University of New South Wales, but withdrew after 2 years due to poor performance. He then switched to studying law at Macquarie University. Secretly, Seth was an aspiring celebrity who dreamed of fame and fortune through a career in the entertainment industry. He harbored fantasies of his stardom and traits that many suggested was full-blown narcissism, including a compulsive tendency to lie. In one telling example of this troubling behavior, he falsely convinced his friends that he was dying from cancer. His meek disposition and apparent sincerity often made his claims seem believable. Seth's grades continued to suffer with his law degree, putting him at risk of expulsion. Rather than seek help for his academic struggles, Seth resorted to falsifying his grades in an attempt to deceive his parents. When Seth's sister exposed his lies, his parents threatened to take away privileges like use of his beloved green Ford Festiva. Arguments with his mother Mary over a girlfriend she disapproved of only further fanned the flames of rage Seth had internalized. The threat of being disinherited from the family's assets was the blow to his ego and sense of entitlement that descended into an evil plot to slaughter his family. The murders. On the evening of July 10th, Seth put his sinister plan into action. Armed with a baseball bat and kitchen knives, he lay in wait for his family to come home. Sister Claudine was first to arrive around 4:30 p.m. and went to her room to study. Seth followed, bludgeoning her with a bat and stabbing her repeatedly. Claudine suffered devastating head injuries and stab wounds to her neck and torso. Seth's frenzied attack left her dead in a pool of blood. An hour later, Mary arrived home from work. As she entered the house, Seth ambushed his mother in a surprise attack, stabbing her multiple times. She suffered gruesome wounds to her face, neck, chest, and stomach. Seth slashed her throat so viciously her windpipe was dissected. Mary's body was found in the living room. Teddy, the family patriarch, was last to arrive home around 6:50 p.m. Seth repeated his pattern, viciously stabbing his father as soon as he walked through the door. Teddy was knifed in the neck, chest, back, and abdomen, his lung punctured and spinal cord severed. Signs of a struggle suggested Teddy tried to fight back against his son to no avail. He became the third and final victim of Seth's killing spree. The cover-up. With his family lying dead, Seth set about covering his tracks. He took the murder weapons and his blood-stained clothes and shoes and disposed of them. He showered and changed. To disguise the killings as a hate crime, Seth spray painted the walls with the words, "Off Asians KKK." He then left the house, driving to a friend's place. The two spent the evening having dinner and playing video games in the city, establishing Seth's alibi. It wasn't until 11:48 p.m. that Seth called emergency services in a panic, claiming to have just discovered the bodies. Police initially took the scene and testimony of Seth at face value, assuming it was a racially motivated home invasion turned deadly. The brutal nature of the crime and the hateful graffiti left them fearing a killer was on the loose ready to strike another Asian family. The community was gripped with dread, but some things didn't add up. For an alleged robbery, little of value had actually been stolen from the house. And if it were a frenzied attack of hate, why would intruders remain in the home for over 3 hours to commit the murders? Investigators slowly turned their attention to Seth. Seth's suspicious behavior. The 20-year-old played the part of the grieving son. He made tearful television appeals for the killers to come forward. At the family's funeral, he gave an emotional eulogy and sang "One Sweet Day" by Boyz II Men. But behind the scenes, Seth's behavior was suspicious. He appeared detached and matter-of-fact when discussing the killings. Just days after losing his family, he was asking about the size of his inheritance, estimated at over $1.5 million. He moved into a fancy new apartment and put a deposit on a $173,000 Lexus, claiming he would use his expected inheritance to pay for it. Seth's stories to police were inconsistent. He couldn't adequately explain his whereabouts during the hours before the murders. The evidence started to stack up against him. Previous poisoning attempts. Nearly a year after the killings, in June 2002, police had enough to arrest Seth and charge him with 3 counts of murder. Remarkably, earlier investigations uncovered a previous plot by Seth to poison his family. His browser history showed that he had researched toxic plants online and ordered poisonous seeds. A container of a plant-based poison was subsequently found in his room. Incidentally, Seth's mother Mary had fallen violently ill with food poisoning 3 months before the murders, suggesting a likely attempt run by Seth. With the poisoning attempts proving unsuccessful, Seth settled on a more decisive plan of attack against his family. The trial. Seth's murder trial began in May 2004. Prosecutors argued that he was driven by greed and resentment to kill his family. As the sole remaining heir, he was set to inherit his parents' estate and life insurance payouts, which served as the primary motivation for murder. They portrayed Seth as a narcissist and pathological liar who had been enraged at his family's attempts to control his life. He wanted freedom from their high expectations and discipline over his failing university grades. Slaughtering his family would get Seth the fortune and celebrity he craved. The prosecution case was strong. Substantial evidence supported the poisoning allegations. Paint matching the graffiti was found on Seth's clothes. Seth's alibis for the hours before the murders quickly fell apart under scrutiny. A taxi driver and sex worker he claimed to have been with were located by police, and both denied being with Seth that day. It became clear that Seth had ample opportunity to carry out the murders in the early evening before establishing his alibi with the friend. After a trial lasting just over 2 weeks, the jury deliberated for 3 days before finding Seth Gonzalez guilty on all charges. The judge handed down 3 life sentences for the murders, to be served concurrently with no possibility of parole. In his sentencing remarks, Justice Bruce James described the crimes as being in the worst category, with no mitigating factors to lessen Seth's culpability. He found Seth had carefully planned the murders and carried them out with extreme brutality. The judge said a life sentence was the only appropriate punishment for Seth's heinous crimes. Aftermath and reflections. Seth has always maintained his innocence. His lawyers launched an appeal in May 7, claiming some of his police interview statements may have been inadmissible as he wasn't cautioned. However, the appeal was dismissed as causing no substantial miscarriage of justice. In 2018 and 2019, Seth applied for a judicial review of his convictions, but these applications were also denied. A third attempt in 2021 was once again rejected by the courts. Now in his 40s, Seth Gonzalez remains behind bars, serving his life sentence at the Galburn Correctional Center. Barring a major development, he will likely spend the rest of his days in prison. The Gonzalez family murders are remembered as one of the most shocking crimes in Australian history. That a son could so viciously slaughter his own mother, father, and sister was unthinkable to most. Seth's lack of remorse and shameless greed after the killings only added to the public revulsion. His attempts to frame it as a hate crime exploited community fears and prejudices. In the end, Seth's own lies and inconsistencies became his undoing, leading police to the truth. While nothing can bring back those he killed, there is some justice in knowing Seth Gonzalez will never walk free again. For the extended family left behind, the murders brought unimaginable grief. Seth's aunt, Emily Luna, spoke of still loving her nephew despite his evil acts. How does a family ever recover from a trauma of this magnitude? They were left to carry on without 3 of their most cherished members, and to reconcile the boy they thought they knew with the cold-blooded killer he became. The Gonzalez family, by all accounts, were good people, loving, hardworking, and devoted to their faith. They didn't deserve their cruel fate at the hands of the son they raised. Questions linger as to whether more could have been done to help Seth before he resorted to murder. A family friend reported that Teddy had confided in him about Seth's problems at university a year before the killings. Teddy had been at his wits' end trying to deal with his son's lies and rebellious behavior. In many ways, Seth displayed classic signs of a troubled teen spiraling out of control. The deception, the narcissism, the rejection of his family's values. Could earlier intervention have pulled Seth back from the brink? Or was he always destined for evil, his murderous nature hidden behind a baby face and charming smile? This was Agent Magpie, and remember guys, be good. And if you can't be good, be careful.